The country place era was a wonderful time in America for the building of wonderful new houses and gardens by a whole panoply of landscape architects, both male and female. It began at the end of the Gilded Age, let's say in the 1890s, and went through the building until probably the late 1920s. The stock market crash, of course, impacted everything, but still into the 30s we're seeing work that we could conveniently call the country place era. And here there were houses that were being built by the cusp of American architects, who then collaborated, incredibly enough, with landscape architects, both male and female. Of course, the Olmsted firm was involved in that, and a number of other well-known firms. So there were an incredible number of very important women who emerged at this time. First one, of course, was Beatrix Farrand, who began work in the 1890s and continued her career well into the 1940s. We have Marion Kruger Coffin, who's well known for her work at Winterthur. We have Alan Shipman, of course, who designed over 600 gardens, and she was active from approximately 1912 until 1950 when she died. So kind of an overlap with Farrand, but completely different clientele, completely different design aesthetic. One of the important things about Shipman's office is that she trained women exclusively to work for her, train them how to go into the field, how to do landscape plans, how to work with clients. And probably one of her most famous former employee was Edith Shriver, who worked for Shipman on a number of wonderful projects in the late 1920s and then went out to Oregon to found her own firms. It's incredibly enough an extraordinary period for women to be accepted into the field. Prior to Beatrix Farrand, there were people who designed flower gardens and who were landscape specialists, but no one with a capability that we would call a landscape architect today. And she served as a role model in one way or another with dozens and dozens of other women, once again with Shipman. Our frequent question is, did they know each other? And probably not, but certainly she would have known of Farrand and her path-breaking work. This was a wonderful opportunity for women. Alan Shipman in particular made her very famous comment in a 1938 interview with the New York Times saying, "Women take the lead in landscape art." Well, when you think about what was happening in 1938, that was an extraordinary piece. It took an entire page of the New York Times with profiles of 6 or 7 landscape architects, including Beatrix Farrand, and then Alan Shipman, who made her famous comment, "Until women took charge, men were doing cemetery work." And by that, that's a little convoluted, but by that she meant bedded out cemetery type planting. Women were capable of doing, presumably, what men couldn't do, which is paint gardens like pictures using plants. And that's what they all excelled in. Plus, they all had technical skills that varied from Farrand, who had excellent technical skills, and then Alan Shipman, who was an at-home gardener for 40 years before she launched her career. All of the gardens that have been designed by women are individual, but they are, go back to Shipman's original comment, plant intensive. And it was the same thing with Gertrude Jekyll, who was my first love and how I originally got into this whole field. Very plant intensive gardens that probably would never have been designed by a man. And I think people need to know about this particular spin on landscape architecture and why it's important. It's not to say that the women use plants and the men did steps. It's a little bit more complicated than that. But getting the message out there about these extraordinary women, their lives, their training, and then the downhill side of after they died, what happened to most of these places? They disappeared. And it's taking a younger generation today to rediscover these women, rediscover some of their projects, and help bring them back so they'd be part of America's heritage. One of Beatrix Farrand's most famous commissions, and probably the one that shows the best ability of all of her work, is, of course, Dumbarton Oaks. She was approached by the Bliss family through family connections in 1920. She was given this extraordinary commission, and she worked for the Bliss family until the early 1940s, long after the Blisses had given their property to Harvard. What Farrand did that was so extraordinary is that she prepared this document called Plant Book for Dumbarton Oaks, in which she listed every plant there and exactly what one needed to do to keep up the maintenance. And this was an extraordinary document. It was nothing like it before. So the story of Dumbarton Oaks is a wonderful one. She had clients that she worked with, and it wasn't all designed in one day. It was an extremely challenging site with property that dropped off hundreds of feet in one side. The other part of the property that was there in the Bliss time was this 47-acre property with these famous woodland gardens. Unfortunately, in 1940, the Blisses had to act quickly. They knew a war was coming, and they needed to make arrangements for what would happen with this extraordinary house and garden. So the house and the formal gardens proper, of course, went to Harvard University, but I think few people understand that this incredible woodland park was donated to the National Park Service. And it was just sort of a stay in the station project for years and went downhill. Nobody had the money to take care of it until the formation of the Dumbarton Oaks Park Conservancy, which today has done extraordinary work under the leadership of volunteers, bringing the garden back and restoring all the stone bridges and waterworks and cleaning out all of the invasives. So it's a wonderful park, but people need to understand that it's a separate property. It's not part of the Harvard-owned Dumbarton Oaks.